Well, first of all, I really do appreciate the opportunity.
Please identify yourself.
Bob Kustra.
I know who you are, but
President of Boise
others may
State
not.
University. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. I do appreciate the chance to share my position with you on this bill. And of course, we're here to oppose Senate Bill 1254. Until today, what worried me the most is that those who have so many concerns about this bill and are the most affected by the bill would not be given an opportunity to testify. And Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you and the members of the committee for this opportunity. I know this has been an incredibly long day. You know, in the classroom business, we say that the brain can sustain only what the seat can withhold. And you've been seated for a long time today, and I appreciate the fact that you're still willing to hang in there for the last few of us who will testify here today. I have some remarks that I've prepared, and I'm going to give those, but just a couple of things I wanted to address before that, because the gentleman who had to run for the plane said a couple of things that didn't really make sense to us, and I wanted to clarify them. And I guess that gets to the heart of the concern I have about some of the things that have been said here at this podium. You know, I've spent 18 years as a Republican office holder in another state, 10 years doing what you're doing, what I did, in the legislature, and then 8 years as lieutenant governor. Over the years, I've campaigned with Bob Dole, and in fact, I was a Dole delegate, and George Bush, and Jack Kemp, and Dan Quayle, personally with them as they came into Illinois to campaign for re-election. That was always a lot of electoral votes, so we saw a lot of those guys. And I've been called a lot of things. I mean, I can't imagine, I could probably write a book on everything I've been called in the campaign circuit. I don't think I've ever been compared to Goebbels, the Hitler chief of staff, or whatever his official title is. And Goebbels, I'm sorry, Goebbels. And that's a new one, so I look forward to putting that in the book someday. But what it raises, and you know, why would there be a reference to what I've said about this bill connected to Goebbels? Well, the reason is obvious, because somebody clearly thinks that we're lying, that we're distorting, that we're somehow not telling the truth. Now I want to go to the gentleman who had to run for the plane. He said two things, and I'd like to clarify it just to let you know that, hey, the minute we say something that's wrong, tell us what it is and we'll admit it. But let's talk about the open carry issue for a second. There was a meeting a few days ago, and Speaker Newcomb can verify this because I wasn't in that meeting. It was in Speaker Betke's office. And it was Speaker Betke, it was Mr. Kevin Satterley, our legal counsel, and Bruce Newcomb. And I don't know who else was in there, but I think maybe, the chairman was in there. And I think maybe Representative Moyle was in there as well. And at one point during that meeting, the speaker asked for the Assistant Attorney General to come in and comment on what we thought was our theory of the way this bill would work as far as open carry is concerned. And the way I get it from them, and again, feel free to quiz the speaker, this gentleman who appeared to you earlier today, now frankly, I didn't understand his answers. I'm not a lawyer, and it didn't make much sense. But he was pretty clear the other day in that, yep, there's open carry implications of this bill. So that's where we come up with this treatise that addresses the open carry issue. It's from the Assistant Attorney General in that meeting where it seemed very clear to us that he was agreeing we have a problem here. And the other thing, I heard the gentleman say, the gentleman who left for the plane, that he disputes what Mr. Rod Lewis said earlier, 14 years on the State Board of Education, an attorney himself from Micron previously until recently. He made the statement, which we all could make, that there was never any attempt to contact any of us. This gentleman said, beg your pardon, they did. Well, we've checked with Mr. Don Burnett, the interim president of the University of Idaho, and I checked with my legal counsel. We can only speak for those two schools. I know Tony Fernandez from Lewis Clark is out there, and nope, that's what I thought. We weren't contacted. So we don't know who it is that gentleman thinks was contacted to work out the details or deal with some of these issues of the bill. But, you know, Boise State isn't far away from this Capitol. This gentleman was working this bill right here. The sponsor is from Nampa. It's very easy to get to Boise State. It's very easy to get to our office. Bruce Newcomb's around here all the time. None of us were contacted. I just like to state that for the record to let you know that we are not trying to deceive anyone here. We've done a great deal of work on this. I've had the pleasure and the benefit of working with Kevin Satterley now for 11 years as president of Boise State. And I don't really know of a lawyer I trust more than I would trust Kevin in this position. So let me go on. The great majority of our 22,000 students, our faculty, and our staff are opposed to this bill. And I'd like to read into the record a letter that I received from the chair of the Boise State University Parent and Family Association. It's also signed by her husband, who happens to be an active police detective. Dear President Kustra, as presidents of a Boise State student, we are voicing our decided opposition to Senate Bill 1254, which would allow guns on Idaho's public university and college campuses. We support the Boise State University administration, educational leaders from the state of Idaho, and Idaho law enforcement in respectfully opposing this bill on the grounds that it is a dangerous, costly, and ineffective solution to a problem that thankfully does not exist at our daughter's university. As parents, we cannot and will not trust a private citizen to defend our daughter's right to academic freedom. We believe she should be allowed to think, learn, and express her ideas in the classroom and throughout campus without fear of retribution. We have faith in our university community and hope you will stand with us as fellow parents and family members in opposing this legislation. Signed, Faye Bevins, Chair, Boise State University Parent and Family Association. So I will assume from here on that until the lawyers get together and tell the Assistant Attorney General that he was wrong the other day, that we're still dealing with a bill that has open carry implications. And I've heard from plenty of people around Bronco Nation, they don't want weapons of any kind in Bronco Stadium or Taco Bell Arena, as this bill would allow. They also do not want to stand in long lines to go through metal detectors so we can assure that no one is carrying a concealed weapon into Bronco Stadium or Taco Bell Arena. And Representative Monks, I would be more than happy to answer the question you raised earlier about, so what is it with all this protection and these metal detectors? We have an answer for that. I'll get to it later. In addition to representing those students, faculty, and parents who asked me to convey their thoughts to you today, I really think the other thing that I have to do here today is to address the claim made recently by supporters of the legislation that we already have open carry at Boise State University and in the state of Idaho. Now, I've been president for over 10 years, and in all those years, and to my knowledge in all prior years, we have never allowed guns on campus. To say we already have the right to open carry on our campus is simply inaccurate. And there is at least one senator over in the other chamber who is making that claim. We ban guns, including those openly carried, under the authority of the State Board of Education. Senate Bill 1254 strips that authority, which removes our ability to ban weapons. If you try to openly carry a gun on the Boise State campus today, the police will respond to a gun on campus call. If there is not a crime in progress when the police arrive, the gun carrier is simply asked to leave the campus. And in reference to previous testimony, we do that by the authority vested in us by the State Board of Education and existing law. Of course, we do not currently allow the open carrying of guns on our campus, and it is a fiction to imply that we do. When I was a legislator, we used to have legislation that guys would stand up and they'd say, this bill merely does, and boy, I mean, everybody would run for the books to look at their bill if they said it was a merely bill, because a merely bill were the ones you had to read really carefully. Well, this is clearly not a merely bill. This would make Idaho's public university campuses the only ones in the nation required to allow the open carrying of weapons by permit holders. The handful of other states that allow concealed carry on public campuses do not allow open carry, including Utah. And to be clear, there is no open carry on the campuses of public universities in Utah. And I am concerned about this issue of whether or not we get an image that is out of sync with where the rest of the nation is. And this morning, you may or may not have had a chance to see it, there was a New York Times op-ed piece that addresses this issue and certainly does spread the word about what we're doing here today. And I don't think that's a good thing. On a personal note, I've got to tell you that it's painful for me to even think about citizens carrying weapons across our campus, either into our classrooms, into our student union, into the child care center with infants and toddlers, into the summer camps with hundreds of elementary and high school students. In fact, the infants and toddlers are on little tethers every day. They come marching right through our campus. I don't know whether I would tell a group, whoever's running the child care center, to be running those infants and toddlers around campus if all of a sudden, we're going to have lots of folks on campus, or even some folks on campus, arming themselves. We're mystified why our friends in the legislature are insisting on this over the objections of nearly everyone most closely affected by the measure. I think it would be accurate to say that this body, in my experience, living in Boise and serving as president of Boise State, is generally regarded as conservative and cautious. And here in Idaho, that's seen as a good thing. And I have no problem with that, especially given where I spent most of my political life. But it seems anything but conservative and cautious to become the first and only state in the nation to mandate the open carrying of guns onto a public university campus. And I would argue, even if somebody proves it's not open carry, it's not going to do us any good to have a reputation as a state that has its universities with any kind of carry. We are moving into uncharted territory, and no one among us knows what the effect or impact will be. Well, we've proven that today, just listening to this testimony. Clearly, the lawyers can't figure it out. I am very uncomfortable with the thought of our campus and others in Idaho being the testing grounds, and our students, faculty, and visitors the unwitting participants in an experiment with an unpredictable outcome. There are many unknowns with this bill. What might be the effect on student recruitment, both in Idaho and out of state? That's been mentioned before, but I have to say that is obviously something we're very nervous about. How might prospective students and their parents react when on their campus visits they see weapons being openly carried about campus, or even signs everywhere we have to post them, and I'd like to address that later, that says no guns here or no guns there? What's that going to look like when you have all these signs around that are required by this bill? And that gets to the point I was making earlier about why we would have to have metal detectors. And once we're required to have a sign that says no guns in these residence halls, or no guns in this stadium, or no guns in this arena, then the liability shifts to us if there is a gun in that stadium and something really goes wrong. So what's our protection? Our protection is to demonstrate to the courts, to the plaintiffs' attorneys who sue us, that we have provided some protection in the way of frisks, in the way of metal detectors, whatever it might be. Let me raise something else that actually no one has raised yet. And for those of you who value the work of the private sector and really appreciate the difficult employer-employee rules and regulations currently at Boise State, like most American companies, and you've already heard that Micron, for example, like most places, they don't allow guns on their campus, okay? So no employee is allowed to carry. If this bill passes, supervisors on our university campuses lose their right to control their own employees. If one of your employees refused your instructions regarding carrying a weapon at your business, what are you going to do? In a worst-case scenario, we could be giving carte blanche authority to a troublesome employee with a performance issue to carry a gun at work, and his supervisor would have no say over it. This places supervisors in a most untenable position, and how many times have we seen media reports of workplace violence that emanated from this exact problem? How might bookings for conferences, for shows in our student union building, or entertainment at Taco Bell Arena be affected? Listen to this lineup of people that I'm sure, at least they're big in my book because I'm a country western fan. George Strait, Reba McEntire, Toby Keith, Jason Aldean, throw in Beyonce for good measure. I don't know who put her in there. She's not on the country western list last I checked.
She wouldn't get my vote.
That's right. But anyway, all of those, when we booked them, we signed No weapons permitted. We didn't get them until we proved that there were no weapons permitted in Taco Bell Arena. Senate Bill 1254 could require us to restrict concealed weapons in facilities with seating for more than 1,000, which includes the arena, but it would be okay to openly carry a weapon in the arena, and in that case, we would certainly lose those acts. Finally, and most importantly, this has been mentioned, I'll be fast, how might it affect the atmosphere in the classroom? How might it affect the learning process itself? How might it impact our ability to attract faculty? We have a candidate for dean of the business school on campus right now, and he comes from a state where there isn't one of these, and we're really concerned as he's checking us out for the last and final time what he's going to think of all this. Finally, and most importantly, how might it affect the I join with the other sitting presidents in the State Board of Education in stating my concern about what it would cost to implement this legislation. The estimates from across the state are very substantial. There's no funding provided for it. I have appreciated in the past your disdain for unfunded mandates. We would suggest that this is an unfunded mandate, and it presents a very significant price tag for universities with no revenue to pay the tab. Why is it estimated at $2 million a year, at least for the first year? Again, that's because of the fact that once you require us to put all these signage up, then our risk managers say we may have to put up the metal detectors to prove to the plaintiff's attorney who sues us that we were diligent and forthright in trying to get to these guys. So, there are those who wonder why we would need to undertake it. I think I've explained that. Let me get to the end of this thing. There has also been much talk about how this bill protects a basic right, the right of the Second Amendment. And I know this has been said, but I just think it's so important to say it again. The United States Supreme Court, including its most conservative justices, Scalia and Alito, have long held that restrictions in schools and in government buildings do not violate the Second Amendment. We have heard some proponents of this bill say that schools in this context do not include post-secondary institutions, but the Supreme Court ruling on schools is not limited to K-12. In Idaho, schools are K-12 and higher ed. Plus, the same Supreme Court has ruled that government buildings are in the same category as schools. All buildings on Boise State's campus are government buildings. Therefore, regulating firearms in those buildings and on higher education campuses does not violate the Second Amendment or Idaho's Constitution. And thinking about the Second Amendment, if the proponents are trying to fulfill a basic right by removing restrictions on weapons on college campuses, why only apply it to public campuses? BYU, Idaho, Northwest Nazarene, College of Idaho, for example, all prohibit guns on their campuses. The enactment of Senate Bill 1254 would not restore that right on any of their campuses. Do those schools really operate outside of the constitutions of the United States and Idaho? I don't get that. It surely fails, at the very least, the test of fairness, it seems to me, especially fairness to our students and faculty. Mr. Chairman, I'll say it again. I really do appreciate the fact that you have provided a forum for those of us who have these views to share them with you and members of the committee. In closing, I would simply urge this body not to undercut the authority of the State Board of Education in this manner. Board members do a great job of governing K through 20 education in our state. You trust them to govern all matters, financial and otherwise. Why not when it comes to guns on campus? They understand better than anyone the nature of each of the affected campuses, as well as their differences, as they travel the state to each of our campuses for our board meetings. They are unanimous in their opposition to this legislation, and why ignore the recommendations of every sitting president of every public college, university, community, and technical college in the state? You trust these presidents in all these matters, administering very complex institutions. Please do not enact Senate Bill 1254 and put guns on the campuses of Idaho's public university in the way this bill would. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I would be willing to take any questions.
Are there questions? Representative Crane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Dr. Kustra. Thanks for being here. I appreciate hearing your perspective on this. Something that came up in your testimony, though, that I am confused about is you stated, I believe this was the statement, that Bronco Nation does not want guns at Bronco Stadium or in Taco Bell Arena. I think if I got that statement correct. And I think, as I read this legislation, and I don't know if you have seen the bill, but I think that this legislation ensures that it will not be at Taco Bell Arena or in Bronco Stadium. Is that your understanding of the legislation?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Crane, it's not our understanding because we're still very much confused over the section on the immunity and the technical legal question of whether or not somebody can open carry into a stadium or an arena, but they can't concealed carry. That's what our attorneys found in going through this legislation. Am I not right about that? Yes, Kevin Satterley is nodding his head. That's this issue over this open carry thing. It's this confusion over, do you mean to tell me we wrote a bill that gives the authority for us to prevent a gun in here, but not a gun right here? That's the rub right there. That's what the meeting was about in the Speaker's office the other day, and everybody walks out saying, ooh, open carry, wow.
Follow up?
Representative Crane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Dr. Custer. I'm very well aware of the meeting that took place in the Speaker's office. I think the issue is, as I pointed out to your legal counsel, that Article 1, Section 11 doesn't allow us to regulate open carry. It only allows us to regulate concealed carry, which is what we're doing in this legislation. So is the university's position that we should change the Constitution then for the regulation of open carry, or what is your position on open carry?
Kustra.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Crane, my position on open carry or concealed carry on our campus is that we shouldn't have either. And when it comes to what or how the state solves the dilemma that you seem to be explaining, I'll leave that to the Speaker's lawyers, to our lawyers, however they want to work it out. We must present our concerns along the worst case scenario. And again, the other day, we were left thinking we have a worst case scenario situation here. If that can be cleared up somehow and it's not a worst case scenario, good for those that feel there's a huge difference between concealed carry and open carry when it comes to the college and university campus. That isn't really going to affect me as president in what I think I have to do to protect our students, faculty, staff, and guests. I will still remain opposed to this bill because it simply allows carrying on campus of any kind.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Crane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Custer. I mean, as a state representative, I take an oath and I swear to uphold, support, and defend the Constitution of the state of Idaho. The Constitution is very clear that I don't have any regulatory power over open carry, which currently can't exist. So don't you see that if we do something with concealed carry, at least you're moving the ball forward in your position, or at least moving the ball forward? Or do you think we're going backwards?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Crane, I think you're asking the wrong guy. I think you need to talk to the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General is who we heard say that this has implications for open carry. And as long as it does, that's what we're opposing. But again, feel free to raise those questions with the Attorney General, and maybe they can straighten them out.
Final question, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Crane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Custer. But currently, the way the Constitution reads, I think open carry is allowed on your campus, and therefore you should not even be restricting open carry on your campus.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Crane, I think I've already addressed that in my remarks. We simply don't agree with that. My legal counsel tells me that that is not the case, and it's the reason why we don't. We operate under the authority of the State Board of Education. And in fact, if you look at the bill, you can see the lines through what was the authorization the State Board of Education was given by the statute to regulate guns. By lining that out, we're back in a quandary. Thank you.
Further questions? Representative Packer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and President Kustra, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. I'm going to kind of follow up a little bit on what Representative Crane was saying, although I have a little bit different opinion than he does there. If I refer to the statute, or to the legislation that we're looking at, there are lines crossed out that limit some of your authority based on the new components that are being applied. However, in Code 18-3309, there is still authority of the governing boards of public colleges and universities given to allow you specific rights to still govern that policy, the way I understand it, for open carry. And if I'm wrong, I would truly appreciate somebody explaining that to me. But the way I understand it, you're still able to broadly decide for your university what firearm policies you will have, including open carry, as you do now, except for the retired law enforcement agency and the enhanced carry individual. If I'm wrong, I would love somebody to correct me. But if that's the case, would that not allow you to still set policy the exact same way you still do now and prevent open carry from being an issue on your university campus?
Mr. Chairman?
Kustra.
Representative Packer, do you mean open carry? You said the way we do now. So the way we do now is a prohibition of guns on campus except for the retired police officers and our security guards. Are you asking me if, because of course the answer is, well, yeah, if you want to write a bill that gives us the authority to do what we do now, I'm all for it. But so I don't quite get what you're getting at here.
Mr. Chairman?
Representative Packer.
I will try to clarify then. Currently, you set policy on your university that doesn't allow carry of any kind, open or other, except for some retired law enforcement agency. I understand that.
Right.
This simply changes that you would need to allow the enhanced carry individual to be able to carry on your campus. You can still set the policy based on the way I am reading this legislation for any and all open carry situations and et cetera. So I guess I'm still trying to understand why the presidents and universities and anyone that's opposing this is telling us differently. So that's what I'm trying to get some help with, please.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Chairman and Representative Packer, you've heard from a number of proponents, or excuse me, a number of people who are opposing this bill, who are attorneys and who have worked their way through the logic, the legal language that gets them to where they are and the concerns we have about open carry. My position, as I said, without getting into the details of open carry versus concealed carry, is that we want a bill that simply allows us to regulate and control weapons on our campus in whatever form they are, as we have now. Anything short of that, or any bill that's designed to change that, is what I'm really here to oppose. And again, I'll let the lawyers decide how we get there. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick
Representative
statement, if I
Packer.
could, please. The way I'm looking at this, I believe that this still would allow you to do that, and I believe it also, I didn't completely follow some of the other reasoning, because at current policy, no guns are allowed at all, and so I don't understand why certain locations, not allowing it in certain locations, as is allowed by this statute, would be any different than what they're currently doing. And when it comes to your larger arenas, such as Taco Bell and or the stadium, you know, with those individuals, the entertainers and so forth coming and needing clarification and or guarantees that there's no guns there currently, I don't see how it would be any different where this legislation says that you specifically cannot have them in those arenas, that it would be any different. And I guess I'm just confused as to why it's appearing that way now. So that's just a statement. Thank you.
No question there. Any further question? Representative Gannon. Oh, he left.
No.
He left, and he left his light on. Thank you, Dr. Kustra.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. It's been a delight being with you.